Hello, MotoAmerica fans. It's time for another episode of Off Track with Carruthers and Bice. You'll laugh, you'll cry, and you may even learn something from this unlikely pair and their special guest. The mic is yours, Paul and Sean.
Hello, MotoAmerica fans, and welcome to this latest edition of Off Track with Carruthers and Bice. You can tell by my voice that I am Bice, and I'm going to introduce this episode. But before I get too far with it, of course, we have to bring in our communications manager, Paul Carruthers, who's out in Southern California. By the way, I'm in Ohio as always. Paul, 1 week from today, we're going to be on our way to VIR, coming up quickly. What do you think?
Yeah, you're right. It did kind of came up a little quick, but I'm ready for it. Actually, for a while, it seemed like it was. I just had it in my brain that it was actually this week. So I was kind of I thought, wow, it's coming up really quick, and then I realized that I was a week ahead of the game. So. No, it's good. I always like the race weeks are good. I like going into the race weeks. I like working on the previews and trying to dig up as much information as I can about, about past races there, et cetera, et cetera. I was just looking, yesterday I was looking back to like 2015 there, which was kind of crazy because Josh Hayes won both Superbike races. And then we have like Taylor Knapp and Gagne won the Super Stock 1000. Heron and Beach won Super Sport, and then Joe Roberts and Richie Escalante won Stock 600. So it's kind of cool to see that a lot of those guys are they're all either still in our paddock in some form, or they're racing internationally. So it's kind of cool that everybody's still involved in what they're doing. And I see that I think you mentioned to me yesterday that Josh Hayes is going to be racing Super Sport at VIR, which is very cool because, like I just said, he was our first Superbike race winner at VIR in our first year in 2015, and he won both races. So pretty cool.
You know what's funny about VIR? I mean, we've been going there the entirety of our MotoAmerica era, but and we have a lot of memories that we can think of in recent years about VIR. But for some reason, for me, when I think of VIR, and it used to be a lot of times, I think it was like the final race of the season. And one of the things I always remember is, of course, that Nicky wrapped up a championship at that track. But there's one specific thing that I always think of, and I'm laughing about it because it's a little odd, but there's something I always remember about VIR. Do you have any specific memory from the past of VIR that comes when you hear that you think of something specific?
No, it's funny because it's one of those tracks where, and I obviously went there before MotoAmerica,
right?
But nothing jumps out from VIR except for during the MotoAmerica era, So I don't know. It's kind of like this void in my memory, and I don't know why.
Well, allow me to jog your memory, and it won't take long for you to get this visual or remember this memory. So whenever I think of VIR, I don't know what year it was, but it was one of those years that when they had that big kahuna, when they had double race weekends, which is obviously what we do all the time. But they had that bikini contest.
Oh yeah,
I remember the oiled up Nicky Hayden and the Bostroms, and it's like, it's still horrifying to think about that.
Yeah, I didn't actually go to that event. I mean, I went to that race, but I didn't get to go to that thing. Was it?
Yeah, I didn't either.
It was one night when we would have been working. So, but I do remember the video is still out there somewhere. You can find it on YouTube. But it was kind of interesting, those guys dancing around in their skivvies or whatever they were wearing at the time. But it was like they turned the bikini contest into a rider's bikini contest. So it was, I guess the girls liked it.
The girls liked it, and it reminded me of that scene in Top Gun with all those volleyball, with Tom Cruise and those guys all oiled up. They were all oiled up, and it was like, yeah, I don't want to see that anymore. So it's etched in my memory forever.
Well, we won't do that again.
Right. Well, let's bring in today's guest. And speaking of oiled up bikini contests, I think this guy's probably pretty happy that we're not doing that anymore. But we're going to have Trevor Standish on. And Trevor is an OG MotoAmerica guy. Listen to me being cool with the lingo here. But Trevor started with us the year we started. His rookie season was 2015, and he's one of the ones that has climbed the ladder. He was in Junior Cup. Well, KTM RC Cup, and then he was in Junior Cup when it became a non-spec class, and then he moved up to Twins Cup, and he's also, well, he kind of owns the team that he races for, Pure Attitude Racing, but it's his dad's, but I think it's kind of his. And we've got a lot to catch up with Trevor on because he's quite a Renaissance man. He's a former child actor, does videos, and like I said, is pretty involved in the structure of their team, as well as being a Twins Cup rider. And this year he's ventured off into a different brand. He's actually racing a Yamaha R7 this year. So, but we'll talk about all that. So let's bring him in. Trevor, how are you today?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Really good. Happy to have you on here. And you know, like I said, you're one of the originals for MotoAmerica. Did you race? I don't know this about you, Trevor. Did you race before MotoAmerica? Did you do club racing? I don't recall that you raced an AMA Pro at all. Was it your first year in racing with us?
So I did a short stint of club racing, but really when I decided that like I wanted to go racing, started off on a little 150 doing like mini stuff at the club races, and right when we were kind of looking to move me up to one of the lightweight bikes was just as the rise of the KTM RC390 Cup was coming about. So we got involved with that program. I was definitely in the series. I was pretty green when I took my pro debut. I was pretty slow, but it's been awesome to just see the progress.
Now check my memory on this, Trevor, because like I mentioned about this bizarre bikini contest that they had one year. My thoughts about you, I think, go back to the first time I met you, and I think it was that first year in 2015 when we had the end of the year banquet at Barber, and I'm pretty sure that was the same weekend of the final round of the season at Barber. And wasn't that the year that you had that crash at the end, and somehow you end up with a laceration on your neck from hitting the guardrail? And it was the weirdest thing I ever saw. And I think you might still have a little bit of a scar. Was that first year?
No, that was 2017. That was when
okay.
That was Ben Smith and Corey Ventura fighting for the championship. And Corey we were going into the last turn, and it was like 11 riders, like, first to 11th was like, maybe 1.1 seconds. So, I mean, it was a pretty tightly contested battle. And I think Corey had to make up like 2 positions, going into the last turn to win the championship. So he was going for it all. And, unfortunately there was a bit of a pile up. I found myself out in the out in the guardrail, a bit of a fluke accident, but thankfully everybody was all right.
So Trevor, I've got a question for you. How much time do you spend on dealing with all the stuff with the team compared to what you deal with as far as thinking about and doing your own racing? If that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. Honestly, I wish I got to spend more time on the actual racing aspect of it. I mean, that's the fun part. But the aspect of just, building the team and everything, it's a full-time job. But both my parents have full-time jobs, and then also running the race team is also a full-time job for all of us. And I'm also a student, so life is pretty busy. I don't get to go out and ride, like the mini bike to train as much as I would like, but every moment that I get the slightest opportunity, I'm bolting to get out and get some 2-wheel therapy in.
How many bikes or how many riders do you actually have under that tent now? Because I mean, the team's grown like Well, from basically you to whatever it is now, how many riders are you responsible for?
Yeah, so this year it is it's 3 riders. We currently have myself and Liam MacDonald on the Twins Cup on the Yamaha YZF-R7s, and then we have Chase Black in the Junior Cup.
Okay. And that's less than last year, right?
Yes, last year we had 4 riders, but even though it's one less rider this year, the amount that our team has kind of taken over as far as responsibilities goes, it's tenfold more work than last year. Each year the workload seems to be growing and growing, but we love it, so it's worth it.
Okay, now refresh my memory a little bit on last year. I recall last year when we left Road Atlanta, you were in the lead in the championship.
That's right.
Did you get hurt at the next round? I know you had some injuries that kind of slowed you a bit after that, but I'm not sure exactly tell us a little bit about when you crashed and how that happened and what the injuries were.
Yeah, so we left Road Atlanta with the points lead in the Twins Cup. Definitely a little bit of luck involved with that. Unfortunately, there was a red flag. That video has gone pretty viral of turn 1 at Road Atlanta, where I know like the Robin boys and also Jody Berry went down, and it just so happened that with a 4th and a 2nd, I was leaving round 1 with the championship point lead. We went to VIR. We were pretty competitive there. I think that definitely knowing that we had the points lead and also just my result at Road Atlanta, it boosted a good bit of confidence for me. And so I was able to be pretty competitive in Virginia, which was the next round. I led laps, I think, in both races, but weren't able to finish on the podium there. And we got to Road America, and on the opening lap, I was running in 3rd and crashed out in turn 6 and broke 3 bones in my wrist. And unfortunately, it was a scaphoid, and that's a pretty common one for a lot of racers, but it had me sidelined for really the majority of the season. And even when I came back, it was pretty weak, but we made it through the year. But I've been working hard over the off season to get it back into fighting shape for this year.
Well, listen, Trevor, I'm glad that Paul asked you about that, and I'm glad that you gave us a report on that injury, because I'm going to put you on the spot right now. after at Road America, when I heard you got injured, I remember texting you and said, "Hey, are you okay?" And totally big-timed me, dude. I never heard from you again. So I think I kind of gathered that maybe everything was okay, but I didn't know for sure until the next round. And now that you finally said, "Okay, yeah, your wrist is better," you finally answered that text. So it was like, gee whiz, dude. I mean, what did I do?
Yeah, I 100% honest. Yeah, when we found out the news, we didn't know exactly what the next steps were going to be, and we were kind of waiting until we got back home. And we have a media guy that works for our team that was like, yeah, don't say anything to anybody until we I think you guys know him, but yeah, yes. It was kind of like, it's been great kind of learning the professionalism of how to go about like these certain things. I've been fortunate enough that I haven't really had any major injuries that have held me out for races in the past for MotoAmerica, and this was the first time I had encountered something like that. And yeah, he was like, the only release that's going out is by the team, so you can't say anything until we get more reports from the doctor back home. And I was like, yes, sir. Understood. So I apologize for not responding. But
that is funny. I had no idea. I thought you just didn't get the message or whatever. I didn't know there was a strategy behind that. So dang it. Now I understand.
Sean, you should have thought maybe he broke his thumbs.
Yeah, that's what it was. I couldn't text. That's what the issue was.
Go with that.
Right. Well, Well, Trevor, I got to put you on the spot about something else again. And you're not even going to know what this question is. But since Paul mentioned about last year and your team that last year, I noticed on the entry list, I saw that Austin Miller is going to be racing at VIR, and he was on the team last year. So I'm going to straight out ask you, dude, what the hell happened to Austin Miller? Did you fire him or what?
Oh, geez.
No, honestly, so with Austin, he's pursuing an engineering degree. I think it's UNC. I feel like I'll get in trouble if I get that wrong, but he's really involved with college right now.
Okay.
And it was just something where they weren't able to, commit to the full season. But no, as far as we're great friends with the entire Miller family. They're great. And I'm really hoping he can come out to VIR, which is going to that's his home round for the MotoAmerica schedule anyways. And I think he can do well there.
Yeah. And I'm only saying that because I had noticed he was on the list and I was like, oh, he hadn't been with us and I hadn't seen him in the paddocks. So I updated it on his bio and changed the name of his team. So thanks for answering that. I knew you'd have a good answer for that. I knew I could put you on the spot. But speaking of that whole thing and with your team, and Paul touched on the fact that, you've got a lot on your plate and it's a family affair. Your whole family's involved in it and everything. But I want to ask you about, because your bio, we still have that you're going to Kennesaw State, and I know you're 21 now. So I'm not saying by 21 you have to necessarily have graduated, but I think I recall you took some time off because of getting started with this team. So tell us about that a little bit, because you were going for physics, I believe, and you took a hiatus. Are you back in school now again?
Yes, I am. I'm back full time. I took I took a semester off, and then I did a couple semesters kind of part time, as not only with the team but also with my dad's daily job. I work with him a good bit, and it just so happened that semester kind of worked out by fluke, but he needed a ton of help that was kind of unexpected. So I was able to help him out a good bit with that, which I'm not sure we would have been able to do if I was enrolled full time. But yes, I'm still at Kennesaw State. I did change my majors. Unfortunately, I wasn't thrilled with the way that the math department handled a couple things, but I'm currently in a finance major now. And
wow.
I'm really enjoying it. I obviously each major has its difficulties, but finance compared to physics, it's been a breath of fresh air. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I enjoyed physics, don't get me wrong, but it was I'm pulling my hair out a lot less now.
Well, I can completely identify with that, because I mean, when I went to college, I was bound and determined in the beginning to be a biology major, and I couldn't pass organic chemistry, so I took some the required English classes, and I took a journalism class, and I kind of knew that I had an aptitude for that, and I absolutely switched over to have an English major with a concentration in writing, and it obviously formed my entire career. But I hear you. I mean, it's tough with that kind of stuff, and sometimes there are other areas and aspects of your mind and your life that relate better. And I'm sure with what you're doing with that team, that financial thing is something you already use and will come in handy in the future, right?
Sean, I think he's going to run into a problem, because I think those professors, when they find out he's trying to run a race team and he's a finance major, they might think that being a finance major isn't his best opportunity, if you know what I mean. Yeah. They're gonna be like, you spend what? How? What? Hey, Sean, did you graduate in 4 years?
Yeah, I did graduate in 4 years.
Yeah, that figures.
Yeah, I just, and I was driven to do it. And I also wanted to make sure that I did have a career in what I had a degree. And I know that's not something that everybody does or is able to do, but it was kind of, me, Paul, I mean, I'm like so determined in certain ways and a perfectionist about so many things. But I mean, it's interesting that Trevor has kind of pivoted with his situation. But no, Trevor, as a finance person, what is the old saying about racing? If you want to make $1 million in racing, you spend like $2 million or something.
If you want to get to $1 million, you got to start with 2.
That's about right.
Yeah. I want to talk, well, we've got a lot of different things to talk to you about, but I want to talk about your dad a little bit. And for me, it's because I grew up in New York State and I gravitate towards a lot of riders that are from New York, the Wymans, obviously, PJ Jacobson. I mean, back in the day, Jason DeSalvo, I was a fan of. And especially a lot of the riders from in New York were flat trackers, like the Wymans, like, James Rispoli, obviously. Flat track's pretty big in New York State. And tell us about your dad, because your dad is from New York State and was a flat tracker. Am I right?
Yes, that is correct. Grew up in Albion, New York. The local track there, the Crusaders TT, Medina. There's a lot of fast racers that have come out of that track up there. I'm pretty sure all the names that you've just listed have probably spent many days at that track racing. But yes, he grew up racing flat track, and so did my grandfather. But when I wanted to start racing down in the Southeast at that point in time, there really wasn't as much of there wasn't that much flat track activity kind of going on at that point in time. And so it was like, well, if we're going to go racing, let's go road racing. And the rest is history.
Well, and then another part of your history too that I want to bring out is I mentioned at the top of the podcast that you're a former child actor. I say former because you're 21, you're a grown-ass man now. So if you're still acting, you are an actor, not just a child actor. How did that happen out of being in Georgia? And I know Georgia has a pretty strong film commission. Tell us how you got involved in that and what some of this stuff that you've acted in was.
Yeah, so as far as my acting career, there were quite a few, moving parts. I would say the first thing that was kind of always lurking, I don't want to say lurking behind the scenes, but my mom was destined that I was not going to become a motorcycle racer like my father and my grandfather. And so, she put me in all sorts of, whether it was baseball, dance, theater, whatever, anything that wasn't motorsports. And so I already kind of had a little bit of I was used to, being in front of a crowd or whatever with kind of like the performance side of things. And I remember that it just so happened that we were at like a silent auction. It was a fundraiser kind of thing. And we ended up winning like some sort of walk-on role for some movie. And it was like to be an extra. And it was just kind of like, okay, whatever. And it isn't until like months later where we get the call and it's like, hey, like, we know you're going to be, an extra, you might be the person just walking in the background, but we're really struggling finding this one role. Do you mind coming in and at least auditioning? And I had never done anything like this before. And I was like, sure, why not? Because I didn't have any sort of agent at that time or anything. So it's pretty, getting these sorts of auditions was not something that's common unless you have, someone kind of representing you. And I went in and somehow I fit the part. And yeah, that was the first featured film that I did. It was called Cracker Jack the Movie. It was like a kind of a Southern baseball film. It was narrated by Jeff Foxworthy. I played the younger version of the main character. And honestly, that seemed to be the theme for a lot of the, major kind of things that I did when I was younger, as I was playing like the younger version of, whoever the main character was. I did another film when I was still in, 5th grade or something, where it was called ACOD. It was an acronym for Adult Children of Divorce. And I played the younger version of Adam Scott. But no, it was fun while it lasted. Unfortunately for me, it was tough because I recognized that there's definitely a skill and a comfort level that comes with acting. But for me, it's you can't, how do I say this? Like the results aren't quite as based on the amount of work that you put in. Whereas like, I know that if I go to, the local go-kart track and I ride my, my mini bike for, an hour every single day, if I had that opportunity, like I would, eventually see my time start to drop and I would start to improve and, my skills would get sharpened. But with acting, a lot of times it's really just, do you have the look? I had somebody tell me one time that, it's a lot cheaper to teach somebody how to act than it is to do plastic surgery. So it's there's definitely a bit of luck involved, and I was definitely very fortunate and blessed with many of the roles that I had. But yeah, I still use those skills to this day, but it was fun. Feels like a whole nother lifetime ago.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely know. In fact, that's why a lot of times, you're at go-to on interviews in the Atlanta area, because I know you're so good at in front of a camera or with interviews and stuff, as you're pointing out in this podcast. But I'll tell you, as far as the look goes, the comment I want to make about that is, there a couple of years ago, my wife was watching that Stranger Things, and I never really watched it, so I just know she was fixated on it for a while. And I would occasionally look and see what she was watching. And I swear, every time I saw that show, I saw you. You were somewhere in that thing. So you weren't in Stranger Things?
What's that?
You weren't in Stranger Things, but
no, I wasn't.
Okay. I swear you were one of those kids. I don't know. But
although I do have one funny story, or if an acting story, that our race team would look way different if this was, man, I don't know, 10 years ago now, and we'd get sent a script, and they would get sent to my mom, and my mom was reading the script over, and she ended up declining the audition. It was a pilot, for this little film, whatever, and she's reading the script and she just declines it. She was like, nobody would ever watch a TV show about zombies.
I'd call Mom.
And it was because at that time, it was a small little pilot. I think they reached out to, a handful of people from my agency. So, I mean, I'm not sure. I don't know the exact number, but I can't imagine tons of people, going in for this. And yeah, it was an opportunity to audition as Carl for The Walking Dead. And my mom was like, this is stupid. Who would watch a show about zombies? So yeah, that's that would have changed life a little bit, but
wow.
It is what it is.
Named Norman Reedus got your role, Trevor.
Yeah, that was Carl. That's Chandler Riggs, and he was in my agency too. Like, we were represented by the same person. So the role went to the person that was in the same small handful of people that were probably sent from my agency. And yeah, we missed out on that one, but Chandler did a fantastic job with that role. So and that was a long time and a lot of commitment, but it was definitely we would have a pretty cool, we'd probably be showing up to the races with like 3 stacker trailers if I did a few seasons of The Walking Dead.
Yeah, you would have been in good shape. So let's talk a little bit about this year. You've switched motorcycles. You're on the Yamaha R7 instead of the Suzuki, and your season hasn't started off well. It's dismal. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll go right to the point.
No, yeah, it's definitely.
So you got no points in Daytona, and I think you were 11th at Road Atlanta. Is it still injury stuff? Is it switching bikes? Is it being a team owner? Is it a combination of all those things that have kept you at a pretty slow start so far?
Yeah, so Daytona, Daytona was very rough. A bit of as we've seen most of the nation be affected by, and even in MotoGP, some supply chain issues. We showed up to Daytona not as we were as prepared as we could have been, but not as prepared as we wanted to be. And we definitely felt that it was a tough one, to say the least. Now that we're a little bit closer to where, getting our program to on par with where we feel that we should be, now it's like, okay, we're actually able to start fine tuning this motorcycle and learning about it, because there's really not any, there's not much testing that we've gotten on it. The Yamaha definitely handles differently than the Suzuki, and part of it is I had, you know, a decent amount of time on the Suzuki even before I made the move up to Twins Cup back in 2020. You know, that was a bike that I trained with at like track days and stuff like that. I love the way that the Yamaha handles. It's just learning how to manipulate where it handles and manipulating that into obviously faster lap times. So I'm looking forward to seeing what we can do at VIR. I mean, as every racer would say, right? You know, we're all just constantly hyping ourselves up because we feel that we can, you know, perform. But our program has been steadily coming along. It's definitely not been the start that we wanted, especially after, you know, last year we left round one with a championship lead, and this year we left with no points. So it's been tough, you know, just getting all the work done and trying to get these bikes ready. But also, you know, mentally as a rider, it's been tough trying to go out and just mentally keep myself as in top-notch form as possible. But we're really getting there with the program. So I'm just looking forward to see what we can do for the rest of the season.
Well, we had Michael Gilbert on the show not so long ago, and he's started his own. Well, he's had his own team for a little bit, but now he's kind of stepped it up. He's got a semi. He's got some other riders working from under the tent. And I know his goal is to continue along this path and kind of turn it into, you know, what David Anthony's been able to build over there, which is, you know, at some point he's had 2 semis and always at least 1 semi and different riders and et cetera, et cetera. Is that something you and your dad talk about, like growing that team and continuing to be in that team owner role? I'm not taking anything away from your racing, but I'm just saying, like, down the road, is that something that you would want to do?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's, you know, whatever we can do to keep racing, but it's also, we want to grow this team because we know really what the potential is, and we've kind of have a vision of, okay, this is how we kind of want to see us maybe bringing, you know, American road racing, you know, back up, or grooming young riders. So we're definitely pretty bold with our vision, but, you know, it's pretty cool to see how far we've come. But yeah, I think that it could, you know, I don't really know what it holds in the next few years. You know, currently I wouldn't claim myself to be the team owner. That would go to my dad, but I'm definitely, you know, the number one sounding board, and, you know, we're just constantly bouncing things off of each other nonstop. You know, doing Zoom meetings, and just, man, last year we spent probably, you know, 5 hours a day on Zoom meetings with whoever, trying to get, you know, this deal and that deal. It's a lot of hard work. You know, it's an expensive sport, right? There's no avoiding that. And we've had to kind of do more with less for a long time. And we have to be really efficient with our decisions and, you know, where we put our resources. And I think that is one of the best qualities about our team so far. And yeah, I mean, you'll see the same thing with like, you know, Michael Gilbert, as he's trying to grow his team up too, right? You can't just throw a bunch of money at something and make it work. But you have to be smart with your decisions. But it's a lot of, you know, behind the scenes action. And I'm not sure where my role will continue to go, but right now I'm just focused on, at the races, I'm just focused on going out and winning races.
I want to talk some more about the Yamaha R7 and actually Yamaha a little bit, Trevor, because up until a few years ago, Yamaha, well, they've had a presence in the Southeast for quite a long time. I mean, a lot of involvement in UTVs and ATVs are built there, and a lot of their stuff. Well, of late, they've moved pretty much most of their operation down to Kennesaw and Marietta and all that. And I've been to the office in Kennesaw. And Trevor, one question I have for you, check me on this. Isn't Kennesaw State like just literally right down the road or next door to where
It's
you know it?
probably less. Well, so they have two headquarters. They have two buildings.
Right.
But like the first one, the one that I went to when I switched to the R3 back in the Junior Cup, and I got a tour of like then that was just like the Southeast headquarters, less than a mile away from campus.
Yeah, exactly. When I was doing their PR and they would, we would go there for the Atlanta round when, Cooper Webb and Chad Reed and those guys would come in, and I got to know that building a little bit. And I remember thinking, wow, Kennesaw State is right there. And in fact, when I heard you were going there, I thought about immediately had the vision of right where they are. So here you are on an R7. And the interesting thing is you were on a Suzuki before with an SV650, and everyone knows that bike is pretty long in the tooth. They've had some upgrades to it over the years, but it's primarily been a little bit more of a standard style motorcycle. And the FC07 MT07 was kind of that way too. They were both kind of turned into more proper race bikes. And the R7 at this point is even more of a proper race bike, being a full fairing and all that. And I know they've done some things with bracing on the frame. So is that R7, from your understanding, is it different from the FC07 MT07? And how does it compare to the Suzuki that you rode before? Does it feel like more of a, is it stiffer? Is the engine stronger? What is it about the aspects of that R7? Because there are tons of them in Twins Cup this year, and
Yes.
Yamaha is hugely committed to that model. So they want to see winners out of that thing. And tell us about the bike. Give us the inside scoop.
Yeah, so I can definitely give a good bit of comparison between the Suzuki and the Yamaha. As far as the Yamaha, like the MT versus the R7, I honestly haven't looked at them side by side, but I've heard people saying that they made improvements from just like the MT07. But as far as the Suzuki to the Yamaha, the first thing I noticed when I swung a leg over it was how much lighter it was. First of all, I can't even remember what the weight is difference stock, but it was a pretty significant difference. And then also just how much skinnier the bike was. And this was like, we were just breaking in the engine. So like, I wasn't even beginning to get close to pushing the motorcycle. And the first thing I noticed right away is, wow, this thing feels so much lighter and it feels skinnier, which wasn't something I expected to feel right away. But it was funny. Liam and I came back into the pits and like literally we got off the bike. And that was like the first thing we said to each other is like, wow, like the bike feels so skinny compared to the SV, which is, it's pretty wide. So it probably, doesn't take much to be skinnier than that. But, first feel, I mean, it felt fantastic. The frames definitely handle a little different. The R7 has more, from what I've seen so far and from what I've understood talking with a few other riders, it has more capabilities of like getting in there and kind of being planted in the corner good, but it takes a little bit of understanding of how you have to manipulate the motorcycle in order to do so, which is different than what I was used to on the Suzuki. So it's definitely been a learning curve, but the horizon is near, and I think it's got a lot of great potential.
And this class Twins Cup, it's been one of the feel-good stories for MotoAmerica from the very beginning. And I personally am a huge fan of the class. I mean, I like the fact that there's a lot of tuning involved in it, but plus there's a good range of riders, from younger riders. I mean, obviously Blake Davis, he's 14 years old, to, we've got a couple riders who were born in the 1960s. So there's a huge range, and it's guys that used to club race and people that have jumped up from junior cups. So it's got quite a collection of riders of all backgrounds, ages and everything. And it's at VIR, we're going to have 42 entries. And that's a lot on that track or any track. What's it like to be in that class? And do you really focus on the drafting, and do you have to make sure on the start that you don't get swallowed up in a group that's going to hold you back for the rest of the race? Or what's it like to race against that many riders?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, and as I'm sure both of you know, I'm a pretty, cool, calm, easygoing person. But definitely qualifying sessions can get frustrating to say the least. And it's nothing, personal against the guys out there. I mean, we're all trying to just make it into the program, but 42 riders on the track at the same time can you have to navigate it, and it, especially some tracks that might be a little tighter than others. VIR being one of them. It's definitely going to be a huge factor into qualifying, especially once you get race time. At that point, you're closely sorted to where you're going to be about. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's hard to see riders getting multiple, fast laps. You might see the front runners only get a couple hot laps in during a qualifying session before, traffic hits or whatever.
So I've already talked about your dad, Dean, and you mentioned about your mom, Cindy, and I'm fond of both of them. And I always like to do this with riders who I know pretty well, like you, Trevor. And it's, I think a lot of your family, but I also need to call out your girlfriend, Sydney, who I'm also quite fond of. And I need to ask you, because I saw on Facebook yesterday, she had quite an event in her life that happened, and you were part of it yesterday. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so this past weekend on Mother's Day, Sydney was confirmed into the Catholic Church, which was pretty cool to be a part of. Our family's Catholic, and it wasn't pushed by me. It was kind of taken upon herself, but it was really cool to be a part of that. She's going to be making it to all the races this year, and she's actually taken in a position on her own, a part of the team as well, which is kind of going to be a good, almost like internship for her degree that she's pursuing in college. But no, it was really awesome to be a part of the special moment this past weekend. Was down. She goes to school down in GCSU, and that was the church where she was getting confirmed at. But no, very, very cool moment.
Yeah, that's great that it was on Mother's Day too. That's really cool. And I thought I knew she was your girlfriend or is your girlfriend, but I could tell that she had some more elevated role within the team. Is she going to Kennesaw State too, or where's she going to school, and what is her degree in?
So she goes to GCSU, Georgia State College University down in Milledgeville. And she is pursuing a degree in management information systems, and she's minoring in computer science. So she's working a lot with like data analytics and stuff like that. So she's going to be doing a lot of the data analysis for us this year. So when I come in off the track and I'm like, no, guys, I promise I'm wide open through that turn, she's going to be looking at the data. She'll be like, no, you're not. You need to, stop being a little wuss and, go faster through there. So that'll be an interesting role this year, but it should be good.
That's pretty cool. Now, looking at her, I would have never. I mean, you can't tell by looking at somebody whether they're a numbers person or an artsy person or whatever. But I just didn't expect that you'd say that. I thought she might have been more involved in something that was more the humanities or something like that. Maybe because I can tell that she's such a caring and thoughtful person or whatever. I don't know. But hey, last thing I want to ask you before we wrap up, and we've talked about this before, Trevor. I did a interview with you a few years back and we talked about this, but for people that don't remember, if you hear the name Standish and you think, where have I heard that name before? We have to talk about the fact that Trevor he mentioned it to us that he's Catholic, but he also is an ancestor of some pilgrims. If for you out there that might have heard of a guy named Miles Standish, Trevor, tell us about that a little bit. Is he in your lineage somewhere?
Yes. So I believe, 14th descendant of Miles Standish. Yeah, he was a part of that whole Mayflower crew. I think he was like the sheriff, when they first came over here, which was something that, think I just kind of assumed, you know, like with the same last name, but it wasn't until a few years ago when we started going through all the DNA, or not DNA tests, but going through like the heritage of like looking back through like obituaries and stuff like that, and making our way all the way back. And yeah, I believe I'm 14th descendant. So yeah, that was pretty cool. But honestly, you know, it's funny whenever somebody, usually the only people that ask me, like when they say, "Hey, are you related to Miles Standish?" They're like 9 times out of 10, they're from the north, because I think they just, you know, being up closer to that area, there's definitely more of a focus on that part of history, because like down here, nobody ever asks, "Hey, are you related to Miles Standish?" But usually whenever I do get that question, it's either a history buff or somebody that grew up north. Those
Yeah,
Yankees.
there you go. I mean, I used to live in New Hampshire. I've been to Plymouth Rock before, and it's like anything else you'd expect when you go there and you're like, that's it? It's that rock? I mean, what? Seriously? They landed there and said, "Oh, this is the Plymouth Rock." It's a little goofy, but it's an even better story that you have that background. Well, listen, as usual, I've been rambling on, and I've kept Paul from asking many questions, but we both got some work to do, and Trevor, we know you do too. So we're going to jump off here, but you know, I want to thank you for being on here, and looking forward to seeing you at VIR, and you know, keep the faith with the team, with MotoAmerica, and I think you're going to be involved with us for a long time. I can tell you have been already, and you will be in the future. So it's great to talk to you today. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thanks, Trevor. We'll talk to you this week.
All right, talk soon.
And I'll just add real quick. So we've got VIR coming up weekend after this one coming. And as always, please subscribe to Live Plus to follow everything that's going on regarding practices, qualifying races. And also we have live timing, which is presented by our partners, Wilbur Watch Company. And they're the official timekeeper of the MotoAmerica series. And they're also providing watches to the fastest qualifiers in some of our various classes, and it changes by round, but these watches they make are incredible. They're absolutely so cool for anybody that loves motorsports. So if you can ever get your hands on one of them and go to their website and check it out, they're absolutely I don't even know if I'd want to put it on my wrist. I think I just want to keep it on my dresser and look at it, but they're mechanically very cool. And like I said, they're a sponsor of our live timing, but we have Live Plus, and check our schedule for TV stuff, and also watch Trevor on track in Twins Cup, again, one of my favorite classes, as well as our other classes. We're going to have build train race at VIR2. It's the women racers who are aboard Royal Enfield bikes that they build themselves. We've got some riders from last year that are still with us, but we've also got some new riders this year. There's 15 in that class, and that's a fun one to watch too. So again, thanks, Trevor, and thanks everybody for joining us.
Sean, do you have any of the watches yet?
No, I want one so bad. Did you see how Roger kept wanting one? So they literally gave him one, and I'm like, well, I can't compete with that.
I have 4. I have one on each wrist and one on each ankle.
Damn it.
No,
where am I VIR?
I'll bring them to you.
Well, you know what? We're in a timeshare. I always say that we're in an Airbnb together. So yeah, bring them there and wear them. And I'm going to steal it off I'm going to come in your room late at night, dude. And I'm going to rip one off your wrist.
That alone scares me.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you.
All right, guys. Thank you.
All right.
Have a good week.